Hello. Um, Clearly still not getting better here. My voice is crap, and the longer I talk, the worse it feels. So I do apologize at the sound for right now, but I also didn't want to just leave you hanging. I've decided to finally take my doctor's recommendation, advice, whatever. The one thing I have not done that they have been telling me to for about a month now is to rest, take some time off, and just don't talk, don't stress, nothing. So I've decided to go ahead and try that. However, as you may know, I'm highly scheduled. I have a whole lot of stuff to do, and so I don't have time to just take off. So I figured instead of doing what we're supposed to do this week, I would do something I've been meaning to do anyway, make you a new lecture video that might not be as long as typical, but I'm trying not to do too much talking. I'm going to upload the video and I'm going to upload the PowerPoint that I've made. The PowerPoint is full of hyperlinks. If at any point you decide to go through this and you want access to one of the news articles that I have hyperlinked and you can't access it, do like usual and just send me a message and I will do a PDF version. Some of these may help you a little bit with the papers you're writing. Some may not. So yeah, there you go. So without further ado, let's do some current topics. I know this voice has to be driving you guys crazy as much as it is me. You know, I just realized I want to do something different for the share screen. I want to do the desktop so then if I click on a hyperlink, you can see it. See, sometimes it takes a little while, but I get there. So I can't tell if this is doing what it's supposed to do. I'm going to stop it and redo my PowerPoint because I swear something just didn't look right. So my apologies ahead of time. No, that's what it's supposed to look like, apparently. I don't know why it's not filling the screen. I'm guessing because of doing this, but anyway, it should work. So here we go. Current news events and Facebook myths. I know quite a few times I've asked the class if you've heard of this, have you read this, and stuff like that. And so what I have discovered for a while now is a lot of people don't actually keep up with current news. When you're writing something, I'm always telling you to double check, triple check. If you only find the story in one location, that it's not worth it. That means it's not real or it's not valid. At no point are you going to find only one source for something. If you find only one source, that's literally going to mean that it's not a valid source. So when I tell you about some of these things, I'm going to challenge you. Look at it for some more. I got rid of some of my old ones, which I still would kind of like to use, but they were older, and I really wanted to update this. So here we go. I have this broken down. The first, I think, 6 are food related. Is that correct? Yeah, the first 6 are food related. Last year, Russia invaded the Ukraine and started a war. This war has gone on way longer than intended. Or I shouldn't say intended. Well, it is definitely longer than intended. Russia kind of thought they'd go in there and take over. And Ukraine's like, screw you, you're not taking me. You have to respect Ukraine. You really do. But anyway, what does this have to do with environment and food? Well, war is more than just political. It is more than just economy. It affects people. It affects the planet. Where this is in relation to food is Russia invading Ukraine is causing a food shortage because they're making it where the Ukraine cannot ship out its grains. It's like barley and stuff like this. our world has become so interconnected that we rely on the entire planet for the import-export of various foods. Is it possible for a location to create all the food for just themselves without importing and exporting? Sure. But then people have to actually eat only what's in season. And we already know the average person wants what they want when they want it. And that's a whole different topic for environmental science, because then you have to bring in how the transportation of out of season goods is adding to the carbon footprint of each individual person. And if you remember doing that one assignment at the beginning of the term, it asked you some of these. But anyway, the war in the Ukraine is affecting us because it's causing more of a food shortage, because it's blocking the sharing of this. The E. coli lessons. Oh my gosh, this is a powerful article. It's a new article, but it's about something that happened about 30 years ago, but it's still a very good lesson. A lot of us, if you watch TV or are on social media at all, which is pretty much everybody, you will see times when there's food recalls or where they're warning about listeria outbreak, or E. coli is the most common one. This is a case where when it said that there was an E. coli outbreak at certain fast food restaurants, people who are like, fine, I just won't go to those restaurants and I'll be fine. This still affected them, because what happened was this woman worked at a fast food restaurant. She made a burger for herself and her child, I think 18 months old, and did not heat it as much as you're supposed to. Anyone who thinks people who work at a fast food restaurant actually give a crap about proper temperature, you're delusional. If you're paying somebody minimum wage, they're just psh, 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 psh. This is how a lot of times we have some of these outbreaks. But again, beside the point. So this woman made a burger for her 18-month-old, and the 18-month-old ended up getting E. coli poisoning. The story is not about that child, as sad as that is. This is about a different child whose parents heard about the outbreak, and so they decided to just avoid fast food places. So they decide, we're just not going to eat there and we'll be fine. But then the guy, I think it's the dad, picks his kid up from daycare, and there's a note at the daycare saying that they've had an E. coli outbreak and to watch your child for symptoms. That very night, his child showed symptoms of E. coli poisoning. I don't think poisoning is the right word, but it's the one I'm going with. Maybe infection would be more accurate. Yeah, that's a more accurate word. But anyway, what happened? 18-month-old crapped his pants. It happens. Caused a little bit of a spread. Other kids got it. So kids who never actually even ate the food still came into contact, and parents lost their children. What does this have to do with the environment? Well, it's because of how E. coli is spread and the not taking care and not paying attention, not keeping up, that kind of thing. But it's a really powerful article. I recommend reading it. The one that I think most people are going to be interested in right now is the one labeled egg prices and shortages. There have been so many memes about, look, I've got gold, and it shows somebody with a dozen eggs, or I'm living it up, and it's because somebody cooked 3 eggs at one time. A whole bunch of things about how expensive eggs are, and eggs are very expensive right now. There's a reason for it. It's not just marketing. There's a lot of stuff happening right now that if you pay attention, you'd be like, holy crap. Well, we have the avian flu that's popping up, which we'll talk more about in just a moment. There's an avian flu that's been flying, no pun intended. I was going to say flying through the nation, but it's, avian flu, bird flu, that is spreading. If you have a bird flu that's infecting birds like chickens that produce eggs, that already is making you lose some of the eggs. Then a lot of these poultry farms are having to kill the chickens that may have been exposed and I'm talking May, because they don't want to risk these chickens spreading it to the other chickens because of how contagious it is. So now you're wiping out a huge amount of the chickens in the egg industry. Then you have to raise new chickens to make more eggs. So this is where that side happens. On the consumer aspect, people consume a lot of eggs, like a lot of eggs. And there's nothing wrong with this because eggs are extremely nutritious. They are a nutrient dense food. They have a lot of protein, a lot of nutrients. They really are good for you. However, the way the chickens are raised and housed in order to meet the needs of how many eggs people tend to want, most of the poultry, gosh, I keep blanking on words. I think that has to do with all of this industry, like those cheap eggs you buy at Publix or Kroger. Most of those places house a lot of chickens in a very confined space. So one of them gets sick, it spreads through like wildfire. But in order to make enough eggs to make people happy, they keep slamming more chickens into smaller areas. Then you have the various companies who try to be more humane for the chickens. These are the ones that are going to say like free range and cage free. And I go by the ones that are actually marked humane because there's a branch that has to prove that the way they're treating the chickens is safer. So I use Vital Farm eggs myself. And oh my gosh, did those get expensive. So when you're losing chickens to a flu, clearly you don't have as many chickens to produce eggs. But when the consumer, the people out here won't buy fewer eggs, it puts the price tag slamming up here. So the best thing anybody can do right now is to not buy eggs for a little while. If you just don't buy the eggs for a bit, give the chickens time to heal and grow, then it'll come back to more normal. But anyway, this article breaks it all down. Okay, so I've always had this pig gestation crates. I just updated it a tad. This is one of my pet topics. As you know, I don't eat meat. I am a vegetarian, but some of the companies I would order from do serve meat, and so I would still keep track of this. What a pig gestation crate is the pork industry had this way of creating the most pork. Side note, I don't understand why we take the mammals that humanity consumes and we give it a different name so we're not thinking about it. Pork, as you know, is a pig. Beef is a cow. So why don't we just say pig and cow? I mean, when you say, I'm going to have some chicken, you say chicken, you say turkey, you say fish. Why is it for our mammals we say things like pork and beef and venison? I really think it's so we can kind of separate the animal from the muscle that you're consuming. But anyway, that's a side note. It's just one of my things. Pig gestation crates. They basically take this cage and they put the sow, the mommy pig, they put her in there, they impregnate her, and she stays in this little cage. She can't get up and move around. She is trapped in there while she's pregnant, has the babies, suckles the babies until the babies are too big, and then they remove the babies and then they impregnate her again. This sow's entire life is to just produce more baby pigs in this confined area. A lot of the pork industry say it's in order to protect the offspring so the sow doesn't squish her offspring. Pigs have been having babies for a very long time. They don't tend to squish their offspring. This literally is so they can just get as many babies from one pig as they possibly can for the food industry. It's a horrible way. If you only think of it as pork and food, I guess maybe you'd be fine with it. But in reality, it's a pig. It's something that's alive. Whether you choose to eat it or not is totally your business, but I still kind of think you should respect you. So I'm really against these pig gestation crates. And a lot of companies are saying that they're going to phase them out. And I never understand this phase out crap. Just stop using it. Um, but anyway, Domino's Pizza was one of the ones that's been on my boycott list for a very long time because they supported pig gestation crates. Currently, I don't know for sure if they've changed. I haven't been able to find out. But I included a link here. This links you to an article from very recently, I think it's from last year maybe, of the updates and how a lot of the companies who say they're getting rid of them aren't quite sticking to what they said. Okay, wet markets and wildlife trafficking dangers. This is an older article, just a couple of years, but it shows the dangers. If you look up the history behind where they believe COVID-19 came from, it's from a wet market. It's where they bring a lot of live animals together for people to buy them. And it's same thing like the poultry farms where they cram them all together in a tiny amount of space. If you cram a lot of things together in a tiny amount of space, anything one has is going to spread through the universe. That's just to it. There's also this wildlife trafficking where they capture an animal and then they sell it. This can be exotic. Um, this can be like the exotic pets, exotic fish. If it is not going through the proper channels where they're actually inspecting them, making sure they're healthy, we can spread it. Mercury found in lake fish. Oh my gosh, this is a brand new one. I just learned about this, and the reason this is a big deal, it's really terrifying. We have known for a while now that there's a rise in mercury in the fish that we catch in the ocean because, well, our amount of pollution has been poisoning our oceans for quite some time. When I was a kid, it was just known fish was healthy. That was it. Now, if you look at a can of tuna fish, it actually has a warning for pregnant women on a can of tuna fish. If there is a warning that pregnant women need to limit their consumption of a fish, that's kind of scary. But mercury is really bad. We all have mercury in our systems at this point because of the amount of pollution we've done and it's filtered down. I think we've already done a presentation on this one where I talk about bioaccumulation. And an example would be coal. As you're burning coal and the methyl mercury is going up into the sky, it gets caught up in the water vapor, in the clouds, it rains, throws it down, and then the little bitty zooplankton and stuff in the ocean eat it, and then each fish that eats that is getting a higher level, which is why you can eat all the sardines you want because they've only consumed a small amount of mercury. But if you eat tuna, that's a large fish, they've eaten a lot of these others. And so the amount of mercury in their tissue is a lot stronger. That's what's making it dangerous. But up until now, we've only been really worried about ocean fish. Now, apparently, they found it in lake fish. That's really scary. That means we have now polluted to such a degree that our lakes are rising in mercury levels. So now the fish in lakes are high. Highly recommend reading that one. These are two videos totally worth watching. This is a hyperlink to it. This is an actual video. I'm not going to show it because I want to be able to post this. And YouTube gets picky when I have certain videos. So I'm just leaving it here. Please watch it. There are two videos. This is a guy showing you how easy it is. What meat glue is basically they've made into powder form stuff that's like a coagulant from cow blood and pig blood. And there might be another kind of blood, but those are the two main ones I know of. And then they take cuts of meat and they sprinkle it on there and bind it together. And since it is a natural coagulant, it glues the pieces of meat together. If you're already eating cow, using cow coagulant to hook it together, you might not see a problem in this. The problem would be if you order a steak and you think you're getting one solid piece of meat, you can cook it, just sear it on the two sides, and the bacteria inside is going to be fine because this is a whole surface area thing. As long as you're heating up the surface area enough to kill off the bacteria, what's inside is fine because it was a closed system. So people who want to eat rare or medium rare or medium or even medium well steak, they're fine because the searing of the outside has killed the bacteria. But if you take multiple pieces of meat, they've already been exposed to the bacteria. Then you glue them together. The bacteria is all inside and replicating, reproducing. It's making more and more of it. And then if the person orders anywhere from a rare to a medium well steak and they cook it, if it doesn't get hot enough all the way through that steak, it's a bacteria bomb. It would be the equivalent of deciding to just eat a bunch of raw ground meat. And you wouldn't even know it because it looks like a real steak. That's the health issue on that end. Then we have the cultural issue. What about the many cultures where consuming pork is not allowed, whether it's a culture or a religion? There are many out there where the consumption of pig is a huge no-no. You don't know when they clump that beef together if they actually used the pork. And what's really scary is they've discovered they use this for chicken and for fish as well. So then you have people who are pescatarians, they eat only fish, but then there are these fish parts that have been stuck back together using cow or pig blood. It's really disturbing. So the first video talks you through and you get to see stuff. The second video, it's just a dude on YouTube where he goes through it and shows you how it's done. It's pretty terrifying, actually. So there you go. Okay. Oops, there we go. Now, this is all power stuff. All of these are older articles. I've kept them for a while because they are important. Highly recommend checking them out. Some of them, again, might help with what you're writing, especially the air pollution and coronavirus for some people, just because air pollution, definitely, there is a connection. And I've talked about fracking before. These are other crazy true stories. It's supposed to help. Well, help some stuff. Skipping over that because, man, I talked way too much and I have way more to say. Now, these are some years in review. I am going to, let's see, if I mute it, maybe then YouTube won't yell at me, but you can watch them again too. So this is just, over the years, I have tried to slowly connect these years in reviews from different companies, different sites, where they just put them all together so they can show you the different things that are happening. So 2018 is when I started collecting these. I can't get the same from sites each time, and that's very frustrating. But anyway, this one clearly talking about a lot of the wildfires and how much worse they've gotten. And so it's showing all the different wildfires, how much worse everything's gotten. This is talking heat waves. It's talking extreme weather. So I suggest you come through here. If you download the video, the PowerPoint, you download the PowerPoint I post, this video is embedded, so then you can watch it. I then have one for 2019, which is then also doing similar, where it's showing you how bad things have gotten. It's showing you our carbon dioxide level, showing you how much worse everything is getting. Highly, 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 highly recommend watching these videos. 2020, This is a newer one. This one also will show you some of the changes because it's showing you some very scary stuff. And this is a much shorter video. Showing you how much more it's gone up, talking about the melting, the droughts, how this is affecting all of us. So again, watch that one. Could not find a good video for 2021 in review, but this, and this is the whole reason I did the share the whole desktop instead of just the PowerPoint. I want you to see this. This article, don't laugh at my number of tabs. If you go here, they break this down from January through December. So they're talking about California flooding while also being full of droughts. You know how I love images to make you really see it. Reminding you about the deadly extreme cold in Texas that happened in February. Our massive storms in March. Look at this flooding. In June, the heat. I'm going to let this one run just so you can see how bad that got. Look at that. That is some serious heat. And if anyone remembers, yeah. And this is showing you the average. So over here, average over 20 degrees hotter than usual. That's huge. So anyone who says, oh, 2 degrees, not realizing 2 degrees Celsius is a totally different thing, you need to notice that. This is about smoke because we had entire blankets of smoke happening where it was changing the way everything looked. And this was because of all those fires, which then added to a whole bunch of hurricanes. And so this honestly just keeps going and going and going and going. And so this is all of 2021. I'm just trying to get to the bottom so that I can, it doesn't want to move. Okay. I apparently froze while trying to do that, but there you go. Supercell tornado. We're having worse and worse and worse everything. Look at this blizzard in Hawaii. Let that sink in. Blizzard in Hawaii. Okay, so that's the Washington Post update. This one is 2022. Again, another video. Whoops. This one's another video. I'm going to turn off that so it doesn't tag me and refuse to show it. I'm going to let this one run because this is from last year. I think we remember the heat waves. We remember how hot it got. Flooding everywhere. We talked about this already, about the melt in the glaciers. This is why Miami's going under. This one, I wanted to make sure you saw that the ocean heat is higher than normal. And so this is just reminding we need to get away from these non-renewable, make it where we can actually live on this planet because we are 100% killing the planet. All right, now here are some of the articles I've mentioned in class before, and some are some new ones. I've talked about the Arizona cutting off water. I think last week I talked about the tornadoes in January, about how typically that's not something in January, but January we already had killer tornadoes, and about Greenland getting hotter and hotter. This article points out, oh, let me click it just to make sure. I want to say, yeah, parts of Greenland hotter than at any time in the past 1,000 years. This is Greenland, the one that, used to always be covered in ice. That's a bit scary. We've talked about the Colorado River drying up, so this is an article more about that. The two newest ones that I really wanted to take a moment to talk about is the even deadlier pandemic and Ohio and toxic chemicals. The even deadlier pandemic is the current avian flu. Right now, whether you know about it or not, I talked about it with the eggs. So here you go. Notice this is an opinion piece. The reason I say that is an opinion piece means it's not a valid source. It is not a proper academic scholarly source. It is opinion. However, if you read through this, it gives you a lot of facts, and you can look at these facts and look them up. And I think they have the sources at the bottom, but notice they have all these hyperlinks. So if you need to see more, but basically this is about the H5N1. H5N1 is an avian flu, which means the birds are spreading it. But there are also other small mammals that can catch it and then spread it up. People typically do not catch viruses from birds. It's a completely different respiratory system. We are not closely related to birds. However, where this one is scary is they're finding birds are contaminating minks, small mammals, fur mammals, their entire mink farms for those disgusting people who still want to wear the corpses of little animals. But there are entire mink farms full of these tiny little mammals. These little mammals are catching H5N1. These mammals can then spread it to each other, and then they can spread it to other mammals and then work up the chain. This is concerning. A few years back, people would say, oh, that'll never happen. And, oh, people don't catch anything. And we're never going to have a pandemic. We're so much better prepared. We already know that's not true anymore. We are so ill prepared. We might have plans. We might have science on our side to say, hey, you just need to do X, Y, Z. But we also have a whole lot of people who would rather ignore it away, say it's a conspiracy, and come up with all their other reasons to not do things and then be shocked. So yeah, this should concern everybody. You should keep track of this because there you go. Highly recommend looking into this one and watching it for yourselves. I'm going to keep trying to be careful because aside from what I sound like, I would like to remain healthy, and I would like to make sure I don't bring anything to my mother, who I have also talked about before. But there you go. Now, Ohio and toxic chemicals. This one brand new. This one is so disturbing. Okay, here you go. So a lot of people will say, oh yeah, I'm not too worried about this because that, blah, blah, blah. And they don't consider the transportation of a lot of this, the number of oil spills, which is what we were going to cover this week. And I'm still going to include a PowerPoint about the oil spills, but I think I already have one recorded, so I only have to kill my voice once. Oil spills are the big thing that I normally cover this week. And a lot of people seem to only think about oil spills with like Deepwater Horizon, something huge. Or they think about, or we cover a ship. The average person doesn't even think about the transportation of oil, much less other toxic chemicals. They just see something's closed up and there's a sticker, and then they don't have to worry about it. But in reality, it's there. If you are transporting something, there is always a chance something can go wrong. I used to have a whole bunch of stories of these. I decided to keep this one. I want you to look at the date of this article. Notice this article is from yesterday. I'm recording this on Tuesday. This was last night, Monday night. is when this came out. The derailment happened a tiny bit earlier, but basically a train went off track, and this stuff everywhere. They had to evacuate a couple of towns in Ohio. And today they're trying to burn the chemicals in order to try to get rid of them as fast as possible. Tell me what you think happens when you burn toxic chemicals. They have to do something because it's there. But now we're releasing more crap into the air, more pollutants that's going to destroy more people's lungs. Probably going to have a lot more people sounding exactly like me. There's also adding all the greenhouse gases to the air, so it's making it even worse. All of this stuff is connected. So if you take a moment to just look up current articles, you're going to see so much of it is actually connected to the environment. It's not just for hippies. If you remember in Tar Creek, he said that an environmental problem is a people problem, and that's pretty much what I'm trying to show you here. Now, misinformation. These are not the current topics anymore. This goes along with that bad news article or lab I had you do. You can cause so much damage with misinformation. This is just a stupid little cartoon that I save in my computer because a lot of times when somebody I know posts something, I will respond with this or I respond with this. I have lost friends on Facebook before because I get very angry. But a lot of people look at the stupid meme or they look at a headline and they share it, and they don't even know what it is. I've talked previously about one of the big issues is there will be a science article, and then someone tries to simplify it, and then somebody simplifies that, and then it's a completely different meaning. You have to be careful. This happens so often, and then people think they know what they're talking about, and they don't. This is where a lot of our misinformation takes place. So here I have some older articles. Have you seen this story? This is about KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. There was a thing going around for a while. The reason KFC is now saying it's KFC is because they don't have real chickens anymore. And they have the most ridiculous Photoshop things up there trying to talk about how genetically modified the chickens are. And they have like extra legs. And there's one that doesn't even have a head. Use your own logic skills, critical thinking. That doesn't exist. It's just a myth. Now, have some places actually altered chickens? Yeah, we cover this in Bio 123 when we talk about the barnyard biotech and how there are companies who have manipulated the chicken to be featherless and to be larger. The American chicken is not a healthy chicken. If you compare the chickens grown in the US versus chickens from other countries, you're going to notice a huge difference. It's because those other chickens are natural. What we have is not. But then there are true ones like Jimmy John, the man who created and used to run Jimmy John's. He's no longer there. He used to use his profits from Jimmy John's to go around doing big game hunting and taking pictures. So he would pay to hunt endangered animals. And there's all kinds of pictures of him doing it. And it's true. So I used to boycott Jimmy John's totally for that because I didn't want my money going to do that. Now, you then have these kinds of things. This was going around a lot near the beginning of COVID. Somebody made this meme and posted it. This is a way they were trying to minimize COVID because look, they're putting it right down here. They're saying, this is the death toll of the coronavirus and comparing it to all these others. This is not accurate. This is 100% a way to just try to make you think it's not that big a deal. There's a few different reasons. One is how many years they're comparing it. When they made this 2019 to present, this was done in 2020. So this was using only 1 year's worth of data. Let's see, I'm looking for it. This is one that I heard all the time. They were comparing it to AIDS, which is a few decades worth. We have now way bypassed this one. They also tried to compare it to, I'm looking here for the flu, just yeah, here we go. They're trying to say the Great Plagues. I'm assuming they're including the 1918 flu pandemic in here, maybe. I don't know, because I don't see that specifically. Oh, that would be this one right here, Spanish flu. There's the flu pandemic. We have bypassed this. We have bypassed this. I don't know if we have completely bypassed this one yet, but we're getting up there and we're about the same stage. But what this is also not showing you, when this happened, we had zero medical knowledge. We had no way of understanding. Current research, and I covered this, I believe, last week in the natural disasters thing, they have discovered the bubonic plague was airborne. And so it was totally preventable if people had paid attention. If they had known they needed to keep clean and wear a mask, we could have prevented that. And so when somebody makes a meme like this, it makes you go, oh yeah, it's no big deal. That's not right. This is damaging. This is you falling for a manipulation. So there's a whole bunch more. In Bio 1, 2, 3, when we do the QEP thing, I talk about one for Red Bull. In Georgia, South Georgia specifically, we always hear this story about love bugs. And they have this whole thing that the University of Florida genetically altered these insects to breed with mosquitoes in order to keep the mosquito population under control, because then if they're mating with the mosquitoes, then we could control the mosquito population. But then the love bugs started mating with each other and it just went out of control. Totally a myth. Totally a myth. But in South Georgia and Florida, you hear it all the time, and people hear it so often they just believe it. Artificial sweetener story. This comes around a couple of times a year all across social media, and it's always a friend of a friend or a friend of a friend of a friend. And they have all these millions of problems, and then they quit using Sweet and Low or Equal or Splenda or whatever artificial sweetener, and suddenly everything clears up. There is a small element of truth where there is a disorder where if somebody has it and they are consuming something that has PKUs in it, it can cause issues. But that's this much of the population. If you don't have that disorder, it doesn't do anything to you. Kind of like I'm highly allergic to mushrooms. So for me, mushrooms are very horrible. Average person, mushrooms are just fine. That kind of thing. There are stories out there where they give you an element of truth, or they put it in such a way it's believable, and then they explode it. Whenever you hear something and your first thought is that can't be true, look it up for more than one location and look at what source you're using when you look it up. It makes a difference. So, whole reason I'm using this is to remind you, make sure of your sources before you use them. Same thing I started off with. If you can only find the story in one place, it is not valid. And you need to be able to corroborate the news. Even if I tell you about something, double check it. Do not trust anyone at all on face value. I don't care if it's me, another teacher, if it's your clergyman, if your parent. I don't care if it's the president. I don't care if it's the Pope. I don't care who the person is. Use your own brain. Look it up. You will find a lot of people misunderstand stuff. A lot of people have a bad habit of putting their own bias in. So you have to be able to always back it up. So to me, that's one of the most important things here. It's not just the environment, it's educating yourself. Because if you don't educate yourself, if you don't learn how to think things through on your own, you're never going to be able to make a really informed decision. My kids taught me a couple of decades ago the phrase sheeple, and it's a horrible phrase, but I hate it that it's accurate. We have way too many people who act like sheep, who have the one person who says, have you ever thought? And then a whole bunch of people go, oh, wow, yeah, but they don't actually think. I'm not saying to automatically follow everything anybody says. That's literally what I'm begging you not to. Having faith, it's good. Having zero evidence is bad. It takes both. I am going to be one of those science people who tells you both are just as important. There are things we cannot explain. 100%. I agree. But there's a lot of stuff we can. And it gets very dangerous when what we can explain is simply scary, so we choose not to believe it. That's how we get to where we are now, where we have Greenland hotter in areas than it has been in 1,000 years, where we have California dried up and flooding at the same time, where we have our East Coast flooding more and more and more, where we have pandemics destroying millions of people, where we have entire species just constantly disappearing. There's a lot happening out there. And if more people would begin to just think critically, learn, use your God-given talent of logic, we were all given it. We just have to practice it. We could make our planet better. We can start to heal things. We can be healthier. We can make the whole place healthier. But you have to learn to think. And so that's why I wanted to do this. Too many of us live in a bubble. We don't look at the actual current events. I beg of you to start looking at current events. Take a look. That's why I do this PowerPoint. That's why I try to do the paper stuff, the articles. I want you to see what's happening now, not just what happened a long time ago. But if you watch and build, you're going to see connecting factors. And then it's up to you to decide what you want to do about it. If you want to try to be the person who just, goes and pretends it away, that's your prerogative. I just don't understand how people can do that. I think we're supposed to do everything we're supposed to do to make the world better for everybody. But then again, we've already discussed it. I am a bit of a hippie. So that's it. I hope for the most part this was okay. But it's getting a lot harder to talk now. So I'm wrapping it up. This whole thing would be easier if I didn't talk so friggin' much. But anyway, that's it. Please forgive me for not doing class this week, and I really hope you watch this. I might even I think I'm going to adjust the journal topic this week. So there you go.